Hey everyone, welcome to A Great Alternative. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this very simple trug made from foraged willow. Also, it's another narrated video. Enjoy! So, what is a trug? The word trug is derived from the Anglo-Saxon word trog, meaning boat-shaped vessel. There's loads of different types of trug made to hold a wide variety of produce, like flowers, vegetables, foraged goodies, or just your lunch. Arguably, trugs are one of the most essential pieces of gardening or foraging equipment. For this reason, plus the technique I'm going to show you today is super simple, I think that if you've never made a basket before, this is the one you should start with. I won't delve into detail about how I prepare and store natural materials today, as I've got another video here where I talk all about that. But in short, harvest it, leave it to dry for around 1 month if you don't want it to shrink too much, or leave it till it's totally dry and re-soak for around 1 day per foot, and then you're good to go. To make the basket, firstly you need to make 2 circles. The size of these circles will become the handle and the border, so bear that in mind because this is where you're making that decision. I used semi-green willow here, but other great natural materials could be split hazel, ash, oak, or basically anything that's long and bendy enough to wrap into a circle. Here I ended up making the size whatever felt natural out of the length of willow that I had to hand. To help the material bend, you need to temper it to prevent any kinks. Here I used my knee, as well as bracing it against my body while making the circle shape. Next, place 1 circle inside the other and tie the 2 together. There are varying ways that you can do this that will give different end results and are varying in difficulty. For example, a God's Eye is a fairly easy weave and looks great. However, if this is your first basket, don't worry too much about making it look beautifully symmetrical. All you need to aim for is that it's tied together. Here, I started with the thin end of the willow, then held it in place with my thumb while crisscrossing it around both pieces until I get to the end of my rod, which I then tuck either within itself or into the frame. It's definitely a rough and ready way to do this, but it's a beginner's basket, so rustic is absolutely fine. I would say next you need to cut some ribs for the main belly of the basket. However, I made a mistake here, but I'll get to that in a minute. The length of the ribs is totally up to you, depending on how wide you want the belly of the basket to be. Then they are poked into the corner of where the 2 circles cross over, bent round and poked in the other side. This can be a little fiddly, so pegs or an extra pair of hands may come in handy. Or if you're like me and realise that they keep wanting to ping out at you at any given chance, then you could create a little hole to place the bones in. To do this, I used 2 pieces of willow, one wrapping diagonally around to the left and one diagonally around to the right. To go back to the previous step, this is where learning how to do something like a God's Eye can help, because it also makes this step simpler. One method that works for me was this kind of half God's Eye, where after tucking the weaver in to hold it in place, the weaver is wrapping around the border, diagonally toward the middle rib, wrapping around that, and then heading diagonally opposite to the border on the other side, wrapping it around and starting again. By repeating this process, you end up with a V-shaped wrap, which leaves the first 2 ribs to be inserted. This is a good time to tell you that I made a mistake, as after filming when I was out in the woods, I got back to realise that it wasn't quite in focus. Not only that, but the bit that followed, I had a mix up with the files, and it got accidentally deleted. So these next couple of steps will be a different basket from the custom spruce root basket video, made in almost exactly the same way, and then I'll cut back to the main one. So with them hopefully held in place, it's time to start the main weave. Starting with the thin end again, poke it in somewhere near the top or hold it in place with your thumb like I did here. Then, like here, it's just under, over, under, over. Wrap it round and then start again. So like in this example here, I headed over the border, wrapped around, meaning I'm then coming from underneath. So I start by going over the next rib and then continuing like normal. Under, over, under, over. If you get stuck at any point, just check the last weaver that you did in that space. If it's heading in the same direction, then you've done something wrong. Just take it back out, back to where you were going in opposite directions and begin from there. Keep doing this on both ends until those ribs hold in place. Easy. Once you have reached this stage, you can place more ribs in, as otherwise the gap between each rib would be too large and the basket may be too loose. Although there's no hard rule to this, so how many ribs you put in, I'll leave it up to you. In this example, I ended up with 6, whereas with the main basket I put in 10 because I wanted a wider belly for the basket. These may have to go in at stages as you go, because as you weave, you'll produce the holes for the ribs to go in. The way I generally judge it is if the weaving gap starts to feel too large, then it's time to add in a new rib. The only thing I'd recommend is that for every rib you add in on one side, add another one on the opposite side. Otherwise, the basket could look all kind of lopsided, which, to be honest, might look kind of cool, so up to you. Throughout this process and until you reach the middle, just remember the under-over weave. You just continue in that. That's it. Once you reach the end of your weaver, you can just go one rib back, tuck it underneath the previous weaver, and then continue weaving. Equally, you could try to always start in the same place on either side, alternating each time you put a weaver in, and this is for if you wanted like a more uniform look, which I tried here, but to be honest, I don't think it was uniform enough, so it kind of looks a bit rough and ready. Okay, back to the original basket. Once you've reached the middle, you'll be left with a V-shaped gap. There are different ways to fill this in, but the way I did here was to continue the under-over weave until I reached the middle and then wrap it round the rib I could reach, and then go back the other way, continuing back and forth, stepping up to the higher ribs as the gap got smaller until it was filled. Once it's all been filled in, it's time to snip off all the loose bits, clean everything up, and then you're done. So, there we have it, all finished. What do you think? It's definitely not my cleanest basket so far. Bit rough around the edges, but it's still nice and strong. This would last for years to come. Will I keep it? Will I see if maybe one of you guys want it? Not sure. I think trugs are a great beginner basket because not only can you make something like this out of foraged materials, but it gives you a great base to work from. And once you've got the idea of the base, how you start off with a frame and then you build in your ribs and then basically back and forward, and that's pretty much it. There's a lot of different end results that you can end up with, whether that's a basket, whether that's a more sculptural thing, or something like a tray even. For example, this is something that I made the other day out of the exact same willow, but this is also corkscrew willow here. This is a more kind of sculptural tray. And yeah, I love it. I love stuff like this because you can kind of be creative with what you can find and forage in the woodland. And yeah, the end result, again, because this was dried and then re-soaked, this should be pretty strong and should stay hopefully pretty strong. So if you're a beginner like me, then yeah, I totally recommend this style of basket making as something you should try when you're just starting out. That does make me wonder, I've been making a lot recently, whether that be trays, sculptural things, baskets, stuff like that, and I'm building up quite a lot. I've given a lot to family and friends, but I'm kind of thinking about maybe starting something either like an Etsy or something similar. Please comment down below if you would like one of these. These probably would be two things that I would put on the Etsy channel. If it's something that you might be interested in, then please comment down below and I might start an Etsy page. If you've watched the video this far, thank you so much. The algorithm loves it. What it also loves is liking and sharing and all that kind of stuff. But if you could do that, it would mean something to me as well. I'm still a tiny channel, and any help I can get with growing this, because I'd love to do it more, but honestly it's not really earning us any money. I don't have Patreon or anything like that yet. So just to help the channel grow and then therefore help me to make more videos like this, then please just share it with a friend. If there's someone that you think would get value from these videos, let them know. Otherwise, if that basket was a bit too complicated for you, you could watch this video here that's even easier. And unlike me, you might be able to make it before the kettle boils. So I'll let you watch that video. Otherwise, thanks again everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.